Greetings. This is Griff Ruby, and I thought today I'm going to present something a little bit different. What I wanted to talk about, I'm going to call this the divine locked room mystery, but it's going to be a little conversation between myself and Martin.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we do know there's a genre of detective novel or story where it involves some sort of a crime, maybe a murder or maybe a theft or something that takes place inside a locked room where there's just no way anyone could possibly go in or out, and yet somehow somebody did it and they were able to commit the crime and then they got back out again and they left no trace of how they did it. And then, of course, it always comes with how would you come up with things. Like, for example, how would you break into a house? Because, nothing's absolutely safe. Can you think of anything like that?
Well, the easiest example is if the roof would be uncovered. You see, someone could just easily slip in there.
Well, that's true. I once read a story where there was this house in the middle of away from anything, anybody else, and they kept finding all these things, dead bodies and other scary looking things and so forth inside the house. And and they couldn't figure out because you could see that all the doors and windows were being locked from the inside, but there wasn't anybody hiding in there, and there wasn't any trap doors or anything like that. And it turned out that part of the roof simply hadn't been nailed down. You could just get a little jack and put it up, and the person just might be able to squeeze through the gap and get in or out. And so, boy, that's pretty clever, you say. Until somebody thinks to look for that, it seems like, boy, you're just getting in here, and how did they do it? So, but now this, of course, has to do with anything that would be, man-made. You know, everything we do, it's ourselves. We have people that guard it. We have walls made of certain materials, windows with some construction, or maybe no windows at all. We do what we can to keep things safe.
Yes, and this one is a little bit different.
Right. But now, suppose we have a situation where there's a building that it isn't man that protects necessarily, although there may be some human guards just kind of there, mostly to turn aside intruders before they get hurt. But that the real guardian is God.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
gonna be a toughie.
Now, God, of course, doesn't fail. He can have angels guarding 24 hours a day. They never need to sleep. They can see everything that goes on. You can't hide from them. Plus, God sees everything, and He can know every intention. If anybody, man, angel, or whatever other entity could come along, trained animal, alien from outer space, anything, God can see it and would know what's happening and be prepared for it and stop it from getting in.
So this is gonna be a little bit different than any ordinary mystery.
Yeah. Because what we're trying to do here is suppose, though, something happened inside there anyway. And you say, well, that can't happen. And yet, obviously, it did. How did it happen? Well, before we get to any of the how, let's back off a little bit and say, well, what kind of investigation would you want to use for this sort of thing?
Well, that's gonna be hard because we're gonna have to unleash a new investigation other than a normal locker investigation.
Right. I mean, even if somebody could just like in my other example, find some corner of the roof that wasn't nailed down and go chick, 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 chick with a little jack and push it up and climb inside and back out again. But the thing is, God isn't going to forget to nail down the roof of his own building, is he?
Yeah, I mean, especially since he solemnly promised to do that, and if that happens, then he's not gonna stop.
Right. So, we have a different kind of how. Now, you might be able to find somebody who said, well, that's what I did. And I was, they got in there. And so you could say, well, if that's how they did it, it must be. But what does that leave out?
Well, that could leave out the fact that he could be lying.
Okay. But it also, yeah, well, he could. But let's say, no, we found him doing this. But what else does that mean? It means something else has happened.
Well, that means that he could just break the power of an eternal Christ. That
Which
is really hard.
really hard. The point is that's supposed to be impossible.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how we're going to solve this thing. Well, let's look at it this way. It doesn't make any sense to solve it a conventional way, now does it?
Mm.
Even if some conventional things may have been involved, the bare fact that they would even work where nothing should have worked is itself what really would need to be investigated, right?
Yes. And of course, well, you can also pray and ask God himself.
That's a good point. Because now when we're getting into a whole different kind of a failure, obviously we need a whole different kind of investigation. So how are we going to say, where do we start? I have to admit, when I first confronted my situation, the situation that I often talk about, this is how it looked upon. It looks like an impasse. I mean, God says this can't be done. Suddenly it's done. What does that mean?
Well, that means someone is going to be powerful enough to break the power of someone who's powerful enough to keep himself protected invincibly.
In other words, you're saying either somebody's stronger than God,
Yeah.
or else maybe God's changed his mind, or maybe something happened to him.
Well, that's a different thing. You see, we are said to have all sin, so you cannot blame him if he does it, but how can he?
Okay, yeah, exactly. So, but you can imagine how people's faith might be lost if, God promised that, lots of bad things can happen. However, one bad thing that won't happen is that somebody's not going to get in this building and steal something or kill somebody or commit a crime in here. That's one thing that's not going to happen, and that's absolutely guaranteed no matter what. And, the angels are on hand to guard everything 24 hours a day and so on and so forth. So, I didn't think that that would have any kind of a solution, but you did make one very good recommendation.
Yes, and that is to pray and tell and ask God.
Right. Not that God would necessarily give an answer. I mean, that would be one way, but it can also sometimes be. I mean, how many times do we pray for, the success of a surgery, for example? You know, a regular doctor is still going to be going in there doing a surgery, and he's going to be using his knowledge and training and equipment that he has. What we're really praying for is that all of this may go as planned and intended, and that it may all work out the way it's planned and intended, you see. So, we're not really praying for anything big and dramatic. We're just praying that things work out. But here, it could be the same thing. We're praying that God would allow us to maybe come across the information. So we're still back to that basic stimmy, though. You have something that can't be gotten into, and now here it is gotten into. Well, let's pass some more observations on this. We can come to this building. The guy can show how he's able to hike up the roof. He also shows us he can punch a hole through the window and just climb in that way. He also shows us he can bore a hole through the wall, and no angels show up. Now, what does that mean?
Well, that is very, very weird. I mean, how the angels not notice that and God still not doing anything about it because he will.
And that's the effect. That's the illusion. What is that? What is happening here? And let's say I don't have enough imagination. I'm not one of those people that solves puzzles for amusement and so forth. I'm not very good at that sort of thing. But I did pray, and I like to think that maybe, not that I was praying that I'd be the one to find the answer. I just wanted the answer to be found. I didn't care who found it. But what if what seems impossible now? Somebody starts reading through the minutes of the people that God has, not just the angels, but the ordinary people who are also in charge of the security of the building. The people who sign visitors in and out and who warn people away, and so forth. But what, you got an idea?
You are right. If you're going to search about someone who's already inside, that's a good idea because no matter how people who are already inside could still commit it.
But remember, God would see an inside job, so that
Mhm.
still doesn't. You haven't really gotten anywhere with that. Remember,
Yeah.
God sees all hearts, and He wouldn't allow somebody that would be able to do that to be able to do what He intends to do. Their sin would find them out or something, and they'd be quickly replaced before they could do something bad. So, but let's say we go through. They have their regular meetings, and they have the
Mhm.
minutes of these meetings. And I'm plowing through all these minutes, and it's kind of boring and tedious. And okay, this week we're talking about a 5% increase on the price of being able to enter, or we're going to have a meeting about keeping the property of the yard around the building looking nice, and on and on and on. It bores you like crazy. And then somewhere all of this, one of the people in the meeting says, "Let us make a duplicate of this building somewhere."
That is a problem. You know why? Because then maybe some of the angels will go away from there and protect that one instead.
Well, no, the angels are going to protect the building that God made.
Mm-hmm.
But who made the duplicate?
People. Real people.
So if you substitute the duplicate, like let's say you have a little forest clearing where this building is, there's these
Mm-hmm.
pathways that lead to it, but the pathways are kind of complicated anyway. You make another clearing that looks kind of the same, and you kind of make it so the pathways look the same, and people go to the other building. What do you think?
I think that's kind of bad because you see, they're going to probably do something in there that'll affect the other one.
Well, I don't know, but I don't know. There's nothing that anyone can do that would affect what's inside the main building.
Mm-hmm.
But what if people don't know that the simulated building is a simulated building? What if they think it's the real thing?
Then that's where they'll commit the murder.
And now suddenly, now it's like, well, now we know why we can hike up the roof, and now we know why we can break a window or even bore a hole through the wall or rig up a trap door or anything else we want to do, and no angels come and stop us.
Because that one's the wrong one.
Pretty obvious, isn't it? See? And that's how it was done. What do you think?
That is good, and well, we might be able to solve another mystery with you. So, see you next time.
Well, see? It shouldn't be too hard to figure out how this applies. I mean, obviously, and you know this, I'm talking about the church. I'm talking about God made all these promises, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet somehow, as we know, it's like all of a sudden, all this stuff just doesn't even apply anymore. You
It's
know,
true.
it's not just a one-shot thing. It's all this stuff just continuously doesn't apply. Now, in my own life, I was reading through there, and I found where such a duplicate was not only proposed but made to happen. So it's like, I see that. How much falls into place?
Well, let's just say that whenever something like that is happening, if God actually made that promise to protect a certain building like that, and then there's another one's being made, then you know He's going to protect the one that He wants to protect. And He can't break that promise because, well, He's God. I mean,
Mhm.
He does all things good.
Right.
So,
But he's not going to protect the other one. It's not the one he made. He's not
yeah,
responsible for anything else, right?
yeah. So what? So that's why a murder committed in there
Or
would
theft.
yes, or any other kind of crime in
Yeah,
there
very good.
wouldn't be the same as in the one that he's protecting. Whenever that happens, he's right away getting that guy away.
Exactly. So that's right there. It explains so much because we're not talking a single isolated freak incidents. We're talking about it continues. It continues. We get a non-pope after non-pope after non-pope. They keep just doing heresy after heresy after heresy, and nothing stops them. Nothing gets in the way. No angel or power or something comes out of somewhere and says, "Hey, you can't do that." So, but if they're all part of a duplicate, fake, counterfeit, you see, duplicate of the real church, well, why should there be a problem? It's what you see is what you in fact would expect.
Yes, that is true. And, well, it is true because, well, you should see that whatever someone does, whatever they want to do, then you know if they want to be stopped, they will want to be stopped. But if they don't, they don't. So you've got to follow the fact that people, normal people, their decisions, it's their responsibility. But if someone comes in there and says, well, you can't do that, they can be right or wrong.
Well, a child says it, I think it's kind of neat. What I found out isn't hard. It doesn't really need a lot of smarts. It takes some, energy to explore the full nature of how that happened. I've talked about that elsewhere. I'm not going to repeat it here, but I think I've kind of explained here in a very simple way that I think, even my own 9-year-old here can easily understand just what happened and why things are the way they are. And there it is. Well, this is Griff Ruby signing off. Thank you.